Om Shri Sai Ram. I am Narayana Nayak, Social Studies teacher, Shri Satyasai Lokaseva High School, Alike. This year, I will teach you Social Studies for the 8th standard. This year, Social Studies is having 6 parts, which are the history, political science, sociology, geography, economics, business studies. So the whole subject social studies is having 6 parts. Today we will concentrate on history part. Which one? History. Dear students, you know courts, Supreme Court or High Court or other sub courts. So you observed about how the activities going on in the courts, either directly or indirectly. You might have seen in the films about the activities of the lawyers or the judges, how they will carry the activities. So here, which one is important for the lawyers? That is, they need the sources, or what we call, they need the evidences to argue with any cases related to any cases. They need what? Evidences are needed. So on the basis of the evidences only, that is even the judge can give any decision. Without evidences, it is not possible to give any decision. So in the same way, in history also, we need the evidences. So without evidences, so here we will call these as the sources. So without sources, it is not possible to write the history. Before studying about so today's lesson is about sources of history. Sources. So before studying about the sources, let us study what is history. What is history? You know all these things. History is a systematic study of the past. What? History is a systematic study of the past. History is a systematic study of the past. Here past means what? Number of events took place in the past. So here the historians will study about these events. Then how they will write the history? Who will write the history? That is, the historians will write the history. How they will write? That is based on the sources. So based on the sources, the historians will write the history. So we can say that there is no source, no history. There is no source, no history. Or without sources, there is no history. So historians, like the advocates or lawyers. So what the lawyers or the advocates, what they will do? That is, lawyers will present their arguments on the basis of the evidences, followed evidences and sources related to the case. So like that, the historians also, they must collect the sources. They must collect the sources. Then what they will do? Subject them critical examination. Subject them critical examination, analysis. Then they will write the history. How? What they should do? The historians must first collect the sources. Then after collecting the sources, they must critically examine. Then they must analyze these sources. Only after that they can write the history. So sometimes there will not be the direct sources. So what the historians must do during this time? If the direct sources are not there, means historians should make the assumptions. Assumptions means here ಊಹೆ ಮಾಡುವುದು. So they must make the assumptions. Based on the assumptions, that is they must write the history. So if the direct sources are not there, means they should depend on the whatever the available sources, on the base depending on the available sources, they must make the assumptions, then they should write the history. So in this case what will happen is, the same event is, it is expressed differently by different historians. This is the possibility is there, same event will be expressed differently by different historians. Why this is? If in these cases direct sources will not be there. Next we have to study what is source. What is source? So you know that in the past people used various materials or various facilities to lead the life. To lead the life, people used various materials. So these materials today are, some materials are available today. These remain materials, so these are called, that is the sources. Then what will get the what? So materials, remain materials, the historians will get. For example, the temples, historians we can see the temples, remain temples. Then forts will be there, forts. Then palaces, then coins, inscriptions, and so on. So like that, many buildings may be there, religious buildings, basadis were chaityas, or then monuments, all these are the remain materials or the remain things which are used by the people in the past. So these are called as that is the sources. So depending on these sources, the historians will, that is the write the history. Then what we can ultimately say about the source? Sources are those materials needed by the historians to write the history. Sources are the materials used by the historians to write the history. What are sources? Sources are the materials used by the historian to write the history. Let us study about the classification of the sources. Sources can be divided into two. See here, sources can be divided into two, that is literary sources, next archaeological sources. Sources are divided into mainly two, literary sources, archaeological sources. Next here, see that literary sources are again divided into written literary sources and oral literary sources. How? Written literary sources and oral literary sources. Next again, these written sources are divided into two, native literature and foreign literature. Literary sources are divided into native literature and foreign literature. Then here archaeological sources again divided into four, inscriptions, coins, monuments and other ruins. Which are the inscriptions, coins, monuments and other ruins. So this is the classification of sources. Let us concentrate about the written sources only. Written sources. So written sources are the important literary sources. Written sources are the important sources. So these sources, literary sources, can bring the contemporary social life of the poet alive to us. We can, the total picture we will get by reading the literature as it is. It may, these are the direct or indirectly will influence us. So it will bring the then period as it is in front of us. So that is why these written sources are the important sources. So written sources, again we have seen that divided into native literature and foreign literature. So let us concentrate on the first one, native literature. Native literature. So what are these native literatures? The literature created by the Indians in Indian languages are called the native literary sources. Literature created by the Indians in Indian languages, so these are called that is the native literature. So we can see various books in various languages, Indian languages. We can see in Gujarati languages, in Kannada language, or in Telugu, or Tamil language, Malayalam language, Marathi language. So like that, in different ways, we have a lot of books in India written by the people in different native languages. So this will provide a lot of information about the then period. See the examples for the native literature. Kautilya, he wrote Arthashastra. You know that Kautilya or Chanakya, he was there during the Mauryan period. He wrote Arthashastra. Then King Hala, he wrote Gatha Saptashati. King Hala wrote Gatha Saptashati. Next we have the Vishaka Datta, he wrote Mudra Rakshasa. Kalhana, he wrote Raja Tarangini. Bana Bhatta, he wrote Harsha Charita. Chand Bardai, he wrote Prithvi Raja Raso. Pampa, Vikramarjuna Vijaya. And we also have the Sangam literature. In Tamil language, we have the Sangam literature. So these are the examples for that is the native literatures. So these are some examples only. There are a number of books, literature in India in the native languages. So this native literature, they will provide a lot of information regarding the social life of then period, next the political life or the cultural life or the economical life. So about these things, art and architecture, about these things, various informations are collected by the historians by reading this native literature. Let us concentrate on the foreign literature. So foreign literature, what do you mean by foreign literature? The literature produced by the foreigners about India is called foreign literature. Literature produced by the foreigners about India is called that is foreign literature. So here who produced, why they produced? You know that the various foreigners visited India as travelers or ambassadors or as for the purpose of selling goods, traders. So like that, so many people visited India. So those people, they have recorded their experiences and observations in the books. So these books are called, that is a foreign literature. Let us see the examples for the foreign literature. Here, Megasthenes, he wrote Indica. Megasthenes, you know, who was he? He was the Greek ambassador in the court of Chandragupta Maurya. So Megasthenes wrote Indica. Next, Fahian, he wrote Go Ko Ki. Fahian wrote Go Ko Ki. Next, Huyen Sang, he wrote Si Yu Ki. So these are the books. Next, Ptolemy, he wrote Geography. Ferista, he wrote Tariq-e Ferista. Tariq-e Ferista. Babar, he wrote Tujk-e Babri. And so many other works are there. So these are some of the examples for the foreign literature. Apart from this, various works are there. So this foreign literature also will provide a lot of information about the then period, that is about the political system, economic system, cultural system, or about the art and architecture. About all these things we will get information by reading this foreign literature. So on the basis of this, the historians will rewrite the history. Dear students, we have seen this native and foreign literature. Are they final? sources? No. There are some limitations. In these sources, some limitations are there. The historians can't accept the whatever they wrote as it is, and they can't rewrite the history. Because some regarding the native literature, see some limitations, there will be exaggerations in their writing. Sometime hyperbole will be there, or sometime there will be loyalty to one's own master. So these things, if the historians take this writing as it is, then there will be some mistakes in writing the history. So in related to foreign literature also, some limitations are there. What is the limitation? Because there is lack of local knowledge. The foreigners who visited India, they had no knowledge, local knowledge. So whatever they wrote, there will be some limitations in their writing. Maybe they are not knowing the Indian languages also, they are not knowing the geography of this area also. So all this that is led to the limitation in the foreign literature. So there is a challenge to the historians, that is, by keeping all these limitations in mind, they must recreate the history. They must recreate the history. Next, we will concentrate on the oral literature. Another classification, that is the oral literature. What are these oral literature? Oral literature. So let us concentrate on the oral literature. What are these oral literatures? In Kannada we call it, this is Maukika Sahitya. How? Maukika Sahitya. So oral literature are those literature passed on from one person to another by word or mouth. What are these? Oral literature are those literature pass on from one person to another by word or mouth. What are the examples? Folk song, folk stories, ballads, legends. So these are the example for oral literature. That you know that from the beginning itself, human beings are passing on their experiences in the form of stories or songs from generation to generation. So this is the habit of the people. They were passing on their experience from generation to generation. So orally, these are, even the Vedas that you know, these are also in the beginning, these are orally transformed from one person to another person. So here, what are the ballads? Ballads are these are like the songs, these are created on the local heroes. So ballads on Kumara, Rama, or even Nayaks of Chitradurga, ballads on Kempegowda, Tippu Sultan, Sangolli Rayana, Kitturu Chennamma, Sindhura Lakshmana, even that is one of the officer, British officer by name Meadows Taylor. So ballads are created on that officer Meadows Taylor also. So local people, folk people created these ballads. So like that, they have recorded, the people had recorded their experiences. So historians may collect, that is information from these oral literatures also while writing the history. Even legends are there. Legends are the local mythological stories. These are maybe true stories or may not be. So these legends are created related to the places or the towns or the villages. So each town, village or places having one story behind it. For example, Shravanabelagola or Koppala, even Pattadakallu, Gokarna, Mysuru, or any other cities or places, they have their own stories behind. So these are called legends. In Kannada, these are Danta Kate. Dear students, in the today's classes, we studied some informations. Let us see what are these. So first of all, what is history? We have studied what is history. So what is history? History is a systematic study of the past. Next we have studied what are sources. What are sources? Sources are the materials used to write the history. Sources are the materials used to write the history. Next we have studied the classification of, that is which one? Sources. We have the we have showed the table of the classifications. The mainly these are written sources and archaeological sources. Literary sources and archaeological sources. Again, literary sources are divided into two, that is written documents and also oral literature. Next, written literature, this is divided to native and foreign literature. Next, on the other side, archaeological sources, these are divided into coins, inscriptions, then monuments and other ruins, like that. So this we have studied in these classes. Next, we also studied what are the native literature. What are the native literature? The literature created by the Indians in Indian languages. These are called native literature. What are the foreign literature? The literature produced by the foreigners about India is called, that is foreign literature. Next we have studied oral literature. So what are the oral literature? Those literature pass on from one person to another by word or mouth. So this is called oral literature. Examples for the oral literature also we have studied folk stories or folk songs, ballads, legends, etc. You have to study all these things. You must read the textbook also. Sai Ram.